What's going on, everybody? It is the one and only Q here from Retro Q Gaming, and we are doing things just a little bit different this week. Why? Because, well, here we are with our 76th episode of our Quack Experimental Podcast. Now, it's a nice little golden celebratory morning stream here, or morning recording here today. Usually I do these in the evening, but, well, today we're celebrating. I am garbed just a little bit differently, as you can see, because, of course, we're celebrating. And this is unbelievably plush. Because, that is correct, as of just the other night, we hit the 1K subscriber special. Incredible. Absolutely incredible. Before we go any further, naturally, this is the celebration right here. It is what it is. Don't hit the play, hit the game. But on top of all that, of course, before we get any further, I just want to say, really and truly, it blows my mind that I would ever hit 1,000. And I thank every single person who's ever done anything. If you've clicked anything, if you've watched anything, if you've listened to anything, if you've subscribed, if you hung out on a live stream, if you've watched and not said anything, if you've shot the shit with me on there as well, I really don't have words. I'm trying to get them, but I really don't have words for how much I appreciate it and how much I thank every single person. Because you guys are the reason I do this. I mean, look at all the upgrades I've done over the years. And remember, I do this for free. I don't get anything from this. I enjoy doing it. And you guys make it all worth it. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. Anyway, we will continue on with our 76th episode of our Quack Experimental Podcast. We realize it's been a little bit of a gap because of the new format on these and whatnot. But anyway, let's start off with some PS5 hardware news that we have. This one in particular, it doesn't relate to the frame rate that the GPU is pushing out. It doesn't relate to the CPU clock speeds. It doesn't relate to the slow SSD. It doesn't relate to the 4K Blu-ray drive. No. This one is specifically related to the fan. Now, the fan inside the PS5, if you've seen the teardown, is pretty big and substantial for a fan. I mean, it's very, very thick. Fans are usually fairly thin, but can be of various different sizes. So it's nice to see that the cooling solution in there is decent. But we're not talking about the base design of the fan in this one. We're going to talk about the efficacy of it. And hopefully it's going to be even better over time. We're assuming it's good as it is. But hopefully it's going to be even better over time. Because the fan on the PS5 is going to be patched with firmware updates over time to be improved. Because, of course, what they can't predict every single game going forward in the future. Sure, there's games they know about that they can test, and synthetic benchmarks and synthetic tests and all they can do. But what's going to happen is that the PS5 is going to collect data on the thermals and the CPU, GPU, the actual board performance, and the fan performance and the heat based on every single game that it's played, and it's going to be collected and sent to Sony. And the fan data, or the fan rate, is going to be, well, it's going to be updated and improved based on all of this stuff. And that's going to help several things. It's going to help cool the console more efficiently. Sometimes it will cool it better. Sometimes it won't need to cool it as much, so the fan doesn't need to run like crazy when it could just run at a slower speed. And overall, this improves the lifespan of the console, and this improves the lifespan of this specific fan included there as well. So this is good overall, because especially when you look at consoles, they do have very limited cooling. Look at the Xbox Series L, one big fan in that relatively small box. The PS5 as well, one big fan in that relatively slightly smaller or slightly less small box, the slightly bigger box. You get the idea. But overall, it's a good thing that they're keeping an eye on this. After all, we know how the PS4 and the PS4 Pro went, and that was terrible when it came to cooling. But unfortunately, not everything is good and rosy in the Sony camp, because now on PS4 with the latest firmware update, there's been some questionable practices and questionable wording, questionable changes and all as well. So specifically, this one relates to the PS4's party chat system. Now, with the new wording and updated, I guess we call it terms of service and features and all, on the PS4's new party chat system, or rather the updated version of their existing system, well, it gives a warning. And this warning says that while Sony don't record your party chats, that other users may be recording party chats and sending them to Sony to review in the case of harassment and, well, I mean, abuse and all that stuff as well. Now, of course, there is one important thing to say here. Yes, many people have pointed out that there is an in-console option to not allow your voice recorded on these kind of party chats and all as well. This only applies if you're using the actual in-game or in PS4 recording software. If you're using something along the lines of, I don't know, an Elgato capture card or one of the other brands of capture cards, you can still record it. You can still be heard even if that is turned off. So the big thing here anyway is this has massive backlash because essentially, I won't say Sony. See, it's not that Sony are admitting that they're recording these, because obviously they've said they're not, and I pretty much believe they're not recording them. But it says that Sony are actively listening to them if someone sends them. I guess, is that really actively listening? But I mean, if you send something to someone, there's no guarantee to listen to it. But in this case, Sony are saying, yes, we will listen to these if people send us them and whatnot. Now, this has massive backlash, like I said, but Sony have even gone as far at first to double down on the whole situation. And because they basically promoted and said, hey, we realize you don't understand this. Let's be wrong about this and tell you why you're wrong. It's very akin to when Nintendo talked about, what's it called, Metroid Prime Federation Force, or Federation Farce, rather. When that first came out and was, well, not came out, but when Federation Force was first announced, there was massive critical backlash over it because it looked absolutely terrible. The game turned out to be terrible in every single way, and it was pretty much panned and flopped. But the point is, after it was first announced, during their subsequent, I think it was a Nintendo Direct, where they started talking about it and all, they really condescended to people. They came out and said, we realize some people don't understand and have questions about it. But yeah, it's condescending as fuck. Now, having said that, the backlash for this Sony thing grew even more and more and more. And they finally said, we're listening to your feedback. We're going to see what we can change and amend and update and all as well. But we'll see how it goes. It's a very strange stance for Sony to take, considering, well, like we've said for years and years with their policies now. First off, their policies have been garbage. They've been crap during the PS2, they've been crap during the PS3, they've been crap during the PS4. It's just a garbage Sony policy style. It's what they do, but everyone overlooks it because of sales and games. But the other one that's important to note is that they're the significant market leader. They don't have true competition at the moment because they just absolutely trounced the Xbox One, and the PS5 is going to absolutely trounce the Xbox Series consoles. So they don't have incentive to bother to change. That's why you got so little innovation and so little changes from the PS4, because they were just so far ahead of the PS5. So far ahead of the PS5, so far ahead of the Xbox One. So you get the idea. So it's a very strange stance for Sony to take on this, to actually, rather than just say, hey, fuck you, we're in charge. If you don't like it, get the fuck off our platform and miss all this stuff. Go to PC where everything is better. But, you know, that would kind of backfire on them. That's why they're coming to PC too. But you get the idea. I don't know how this one's going to go. I want to see the updated and amended changes, if they're even important, or what the wording is on them. But now, because we keep it fair and unbiased, well, it's time to shit on the other company as well. Not just out of principle, but the fact that they also have some party chat issues going on at the moment too. So, we're talking Microsoft, Xbox, Xbox One, and the party chat system. Even though the whole social aspect of the Xbox One was a complete step backwards from the version on the 360, well, there's another issue right now. Microsoft are currently opting to phase out peer-to-peer party chat systems. Currently, the way it's going, because of it being peer-to-peer, people, depending on their home setup, their network, and the knowledge and all as well, they can invite people into their parties to get their IPs, and they can use this to DDoS them. So this is presumably either just for people that are arseholes and do this for fun, or it could be for people who are, say, bad at the game and want to get them to, you know, leave your team if you can't boot them. Or if you're on the losing team and you want to just invite someone from the winning team and they accept, and then suddenly, oh, boom, you're just denied, just like that, kicked off the internet. So it's a terrible system and shouldn't be used in general. Obviously, server-side, everything is much better when it comes to that kind of thing. But at least they're changing it. Although it's a shame that it took them this long, and I guess this kind of issue to realize it. But now moving forward, just like next gen, we're going to talk about failures of next gen, for which there already seems to be a startling amount. Now, this particular example we're going to use here is Devil May Cry 5 Special Edition. Cue all the rabid fanboys for this game. But anyway, as I mentioned before, performance modes are just failures of both hardware and game design, and your creative vision and all too. And Devil May Cry 5 Special Edition has 4 of these failures, if you will. Now, let's outline some of them here. So they have 4K, 30 FPS with ray tracing. There's no word on if it's going to be native 4K, if it's going to be dynamic 4K, upscaled 4K, whatever it is. And that's very important to note because, well, 4K is a nice fake term thrown around these days. There's also going to be 1080p 60 with ray tracing. That's a very next-gen resolution and frame rate, isn't it? Yeah, yikes. There's also going to be 4K 60 with no ray tracing. This one, of course, is, again, no word if it's going to be native, dynamic, upscaled, etc., etc. And then there's up to 120 FPS mode. Of course, the important ones to note in this one are up to 120. It's not a 120. It also comes with no ray tracing and there's no resolution specified. So we don't know how that one is going to go there. Now, it's important to not give this hardware the benefit of the doubt, as we've covered already, with the likes of, well, terrible frame rates, missing features, native, dynamic, upscaled AI, and someone's just going to go DLSS and interpolation and all this bullshit and temporal injection and all. Save it. Save it. You cannot show me anything that looks better upscaled, with the exception of 2 small things that have low quality textures. Oh, but Q, when you're playing, Death Stranding, one of the specific boxes on Sam's back looks better when using DLSS. Yeah, because that's a pretty low quality texture. The rest of the game, which is 99.99999% of it, doesn't look as good. So, yeah. Other than that, and what was the other one? The vending machine and control, which is naturally, the stuff inside it is much, much smaller and, well, lower quality resolution textures. Yeah, get out of here with that stuff. I'll take my significant better native one when I can do it, because like I said before about if 4K is a waste or not, it's only a waste if you're punching above your weight and you don't have the hardware for it. TLDR, next gen hardware for the PS5 and Xbox One, it sucks, it's massively limited, and, well, the console, as you can see, reflects this. But speaking of next gen and resolutions and upscaling and failures and whatnot too, we're going to talk about something that arguably is a smaller and less important thing, but is indicative of a bigger and more important thing. We're going to talk next gen UIs. Now, I refuse to call them UX because the user experience starts with an E, and the X makes it sound cool. Ooh, it's a UI. Deal with it. User interface. That's it. Now, recently, the PS5 had a pre-recorded state of play showcase for the UI, and it looks good in the sense that it's very clean looking in the way it's shown and rendered and whatnot, and it looks very high quality. Not massively fan of some of the features and all on there too, but the point is that it's clearly revealed to be rendered at 4K, which was because the console is supposedly going to natively output 4K as the default. Well, it was obvious when you see it. It looked clean, it looked clear, it looked crisp, it looked very, very high resolution. Now, that's good because, you know, slick and all that as well. It feels like quality. It looks like it's a premium interface, and premium design has gone into all of this. The Xbox Series L, on the other hand, which, remember, is officially on paper technically the more powerful console, it renders the UI at 1080p. Even when you're outputting at 4K, and then just upscales it. Just like it did on the Xbox One X, which when outputting native 4K on the dashboard, it still renders at 1080p. And I don't know exactly about the Xbox Series X version or Xbox Series L version. We have to see it in front. I have to see it in front of me to actually fully be able to 100% give a verdict on it. But on the Xbox One X, when rendering it when rendering the dashboard, at least anyway, at 4K on a 4K monitor, the UI looks terrible. You can tell it's low resolution and blurry. It just looks off and cheap. Now, again, people are saying, what's the big deal about this, and what's the whole other story and all too. Well, why it's a big deal is because it shows what type of corners Xbox are willing to cut. And remember, the Xbox Series L is supposed to be the premium product and the world's most powerful console. And just like how some games and the PS5 have ray tracing available on day one at launch, and the same games on Xbox will have them patched in later. It will have ray tracing patched in post-launch. That's not very premium. That's not very world's most powerful console, is it? So doing even small things like this in lower quality than what is technically the lower quality and lower powered platform from the competitor, it makes you wonder, what else are they willing to cut? Now, speaking of this whole world's most powerful console, well, Microsoft have actually gone back and changed their product pages and their wording on their pages to just world's most powerful Xbox. Now, that's kind of questionable, because when Microsoft first announced the Xbox Series L, they had it as world's most powerful Xbox because they didn't know what Sony was going to do. And then Sony announced what they were going to do, and Microsoft changed it to most powerful console in the world. Now here we are a few weeks from launch. Games are almost complete. What's the deal? Why is it going back to just most powerful Xbox? And on the top of that as well, some games, specifically in this case we're talking about Watch Dogs Legion, have had the promise of ray tracing removed from the Microsoft Store game page. That's kind of interesting and worrying, isn't it? Especially when several other games are getting ray tracing patched in later, including multi-platform games like Devil May Cry 5 Special Edition will have ray tracing on day one on the PS5, but not on the Xbox. Interesting. Now, it is important to note that over the week, well, last week I guess, there was an Ask Me Anything with one of the, I think it was the creative director or technical director of Watch Dogs Legion, and he did say that it would carry 4K 30 FPS on the 4K 30 FPS with ray tracing on the Xbox Series L. But I just think it's kind of important. Dog's going crazy. I do think it's kind of important that some of this stuff was removed. There's usually reasons, calculated reasons for this. But remember, all this talk and all this stuff about the world's most powerful console and 60 FPS being the default output, here we have yet another 30 FPS game with a performance mode. Absolute failure. But next up we got some Gamestop stuff to talk about. Now, while Gamestop are currently planning on closing another 200 plus stores around the world, they still have found a time to try and, well, not found a time, but they found a way to slightly keep themselves afloat for the short-term future, I guess, anyway. So, GameStop has officially partnered with Microsoft to push the Xbox. And this is to be completely expected when you think about it. Microsoft completely failed this generation and lost so bad that it makes sense that they would partner with what is the number one brick and mortar retail store around most sections of the world to push their platform. For example, I don't know if you know this, but when you go into a GameStop, Microsoft, Sony, Nintendo, whoever it is, pretty much everything you see is paid for by them. Sony have paid to have their stuff right at the front of the store a lot of the time, to be the first thing you see, to be displayed more prominently. Microsoft will pay for it to be somewhere else or whatever it is, to have their own designs and all the stuff too. I've seen the contracts, believe me. So, the big important thing to do with this one is not only are they going to be partnering with them for Xbox, but Microsoft are also going to be opting to refit and outfit many of their stores and staff with Microsoft devices. So they're going to have wandering POS units with tablets and surfaces and whatnot. Their new computers and interactive interfaces and all. It's all going to be new Microsoft Touch stuff and Microsoft powered stuff. I know someone's going to say, but it already runs Windows. But this is going to be a little bit different. And they will also, this will also include pushing Xbox products and services. Mainly because it's gotten to the point where Microsoft are willing to split profit with GameStop over digital sales and digital Xbox codes. So think of it that way. Microsoft will share revenue with digital products. Now, typically, you may be wondering how this works. If you go into GameStop and buy a €60 Xbox Live code, it costs €60. GameStop technically makes no money off that individual product sold because it's sold to them essentially at €60 and it's provided from the company at €60. Now, there is one other thing that a lot of people don't explain to you in this. Again, I've seen the contracts. So what happens is you get GameStop gets a stipend for every single one of these sold. Or, well, it depends on the actual contract at the time. I've seen ones where they get kind of a little bonus for every individual one sold. I've seen ones where they get them for selling a certain amount. Or I've seen ones where they've also gotten them to, it's like, hey, we will pay you $10,000 a year. It's significantly more than that, but I'm just giving you a random number. We will pay you $10,000 a year for you to sell this in your store. So it's that kind of thing, especially when a lot of the time they either come on the little code, the little kind of cardboard cutout code things that are provided by Microsoft, or they're actually printed directly from GameStop till receipts. But when you look at it this way, it seems like Microsoft are going hard with kind of getting GameStop to push Xbox, to push that as the console to buy. Even though most people are still going to buy a PS5, it'll probably outsell both Xboxes combined about 2 or 3 to 1. But the point is, Microsoft and GameStop have partnered, and GameStop will now likely, not saying it's going to happen, but likely be focusing on that because they will be getting even cuts of digital revenue and all too. So this probably won't apply to here in Ireland, but over the next, well, let's call it a couple of years, if GameStop even lasts that long, I'm very curious to see the reports from the US and Canada to see how it comes in and how it affects everything, and Microsoft's sales and bottom line. But speaking of the future, let's talk some Blade Runner, specifically Blade Runner Enhanced Edition. Now I know what you're thinking, but Q, Blade Runner was set in the past, considering we live in 2020, the end of 2020 at this point. That is technically true, but we're going to still talk about the future that is Blade Runner. Now, specifically, we're talking Blade Runner Enhanced Edition. You might remember that the original point-and-click Westwood game, which was recently saved by ScumVM and GOG, well, Night Dive Studios are making a remastered version of this game. In fact, recently, they even put out a new updated 60 FPS cinematic, I guess we could call it trailer, about the differences, the comparisons for some of the old, I think they ran at 25 FPS, old low-resolution cinematic cutscenes, and now these ones are upscaled and whatnot, using all the fancy techniques, and run at 60 FPS. Now, this game, which is supposed to be coming out this year, unfortunately has received a delay outside of 2020. Now, not only has it received a delay to release outside of 2020, but it's not 2021, it's not early 2021, it's not mid 2021, it's not late 2021. We don't have a specific month. In fact, we don't even have a specific year anymore, because it has been delayed to a TBD, to be decided, to be determined, depending on what way. I always think it's to be determined, but you get the idea. Now, this is all down to the lack of source code. They were originally thinking that they could get it done properly without the original source code. Then they've been trying to source the source code. But apparently, the big issue with this is that the source code hasn't been available. In fact, this means that the likes of animations, models, how things interact with each other in the world and all are a nightmare for them as developers to interact with and port everything on a programming level. Now, I don't know the full ins and outs of this and what's true and what's not, but apparently they've even reached out to EA, and EA have been uncooperative, as they've been saying. But apparently, if you listen to how the stories go over all this time, EA apparently don't even have the old source code for all of this, which is why it was so much of an issue when it came to doing anything with it. But it's a little bit disappointing for me. I mean, I still have the physical disc version of it. I can get the ScumVM patch and just put it on there too. Or even if I really, really wanted, I could buy the original on GOG and just use it that way. But I was looking forward to a proper enhanced edition, if you will. Wait, enhance. edition. I mean, we all love Blade Runner, don't we? But yeah, it's a little bit disappointing. Hopefully it all pans out. I would love to see it, and I was planning on buying the Steam remaster. But speaking of updates and remasters that aren't really happening these days, well, we have Halo 5. Now, you might remember Halo 5 launched on the Xbox One. It was a terrible performing game on there from a technical standpoint. But it did receive an Xbox One X patch where it would run at dynamic 4K, would try to maintain 60 FPS, and had some slightly higher quality settings and all there too. Now, naturally, many games have been getting stuff like, well, let's use the Master Chief Collection as an example. It's been getting an Xbox Series S and Xbox Series L upgrade. 120 FPS, 4K, blah blah blah, yada yada yada. The usual thing you'd expect. But Halo 5, despite being an actual, I guess you call it a native Xbox One game, will not be receiving a proper next-gen update. Like said, for example, Halo Master Chief Collection. It will just be running better through backwards compatibility. So basically the dynamic 4K, because of the extra power and all afforded to the console, will likely stay at a proper, true, full native 4K. And the frame rate will likely, or should likely, stick solid at 60 FPS. Maybe, who knows, with one or two slight drops or anything like that. But it's not getting anything beyond the point. Of course it will benefit from auto HDR and all as well. In fact, does Halo 5 even have normal HDR? I can't remember. But either way, you get the idea. It's not receiving a proper full update and full next-gen version port, if you will. Now, me, personally, I'll stick to waiting for the eventual PC port. It has to happen at this point, because after the Master Chief Collection, they'd be stupid not to bring it to PC before Halo Indefinitely Delayed comes out. Now, I'm not saying, they've already said they're not going to add it to the Master Chief Collection, which is fine. Just sell it separately, sell it on Steam, don't put it exclusive on the Windows 10 store. That thing is ours. You've learned that the hard way. Thank you with Gears 5, thank you with Halo, the Master Chief Collection. Because I just want to be able to play a shitload of Warzone Firefight the best way to play. At 120 FPS, native resolution, highest quality settings, with a mouse and keyboard. And it really goes to show just how little of a shit that anyone gives, like Microsoft, Xbox, 343 Industries, whoever it is, gives a shit for Halo 5. And just how poor it was received. It's not even getting an update. But Master Chief Collection is. Interesting. But we've got one more interesting thing to talk about here, and that is the PS4. But Q, you mean the PS5, right? No, it's PS4. So, several games, mostly first-party Sony games, but not limited and exclusive to it. And of course, not including all of them. But PS4 games have been getting updates. Now, these PS4 updates, anyway, have mostly been getting pre-PS5 updates, where some of them will be slight improvements, some of them will be compatibility issues to fix so they will run in backwards compatible on the PS5, but you get the idea. Some examples of this, although this one I guess is a little bit bigger and more substantial and significant, I cannot speak this morning, but Ghost of Tsushima, for example. Now, I can't verify this one myself. I haven't got a chance to do it. But based on the official announcement that Sucker Punch have said that the Ghost of Tsushima will be receiving a patch to run in backwards compatibility mode with an unlocked frame rate of up to 60 FPS. Of course, it'll have faster load times and all as well. But from what I'm told, the load times in that game are very, very small and quick as they are. But this is all enhancements for the PS5, the backwards compatibility, the compatibility with such and all too. Now, the more important thing is, for some games, this specifically can leave benefits on the PS4 versions as well. Now, let's take The Last of Us Remastered after all. Now remember, Last of Us Remastered is one of my two favorite PS4 games and has got updated to patch 1.11. Now, the important thing to note here is that through whatever it is, through optimizations, or maybe it's some type of new coding technique or new type of compression they have access to, or something they've learned along the way, or maybe learned to work with because of the PS5, well, this game has seen dramatic improvements when it comes to loading times. Let me give you a quick example. The Last of Us Remastered, and especially The Last of Us Part 2, both of these games had significantly bad loading times, minutes at a time. It was absolutely awful. I don't know how people even accepted that in any way, shape, or form and said, this is fine. But, people have very low quality standards these days. Now, people have reported, there's videos out there and all, The Last of Us Remastered load times being significantly decreased, tested and shown off. That depending on what you're loading, depending on the level and the console you're using and whatnot, be it PS4, PS4 Pro, the settings and all you're using, well, some of them have dropped load times down to about 14 seconds on the regular internal PS4 drive. And that comes down in a comparison of something that was usually a load time of 1 minute and 30 seconds. So that's a pretty big drop right there. There's other ones as well out there that have now 30-second load times as opposed to 2-minute plus load times. Again, a pretty big deal. Now, I know me personally, I gave it a quick little test and all as well. What I did was a few days ago, or I guess it's maybe a little over a week ago now, I got an external SSD. I put all my important or semi-important or games that I thought I might play at some point in the future, PS4 games, onto this external SSD. Not mainly to use for the PS4, but mainly it's because I'd have access to them on the PS5. Because they're all external, it's a tiny little, it's a 1TB drive, it fits in the palm of my hand, even if I do have decently sized big hands. But the point is, I loaded them all on there, and I updated it and tested it out. Now, I don't know what my pre-patch SSD loading times were, but the level I chose to load, cold, from the main menu, which was Pittsburgh, by the way, right at the start of Pittsburgh, where they crashed the car. Of course, when you pick the chapter and the section, it skips the intro. It had a 6-second load time. That's pretty good. Now, as I said, I'm not 100% sure about the benefits of the patch versus the benefits of the SSD, but I'm assuming it's a combination of both of them together to give this increased loading time. And that's significant for something like the PS4. It's why it just blew my mind that they used 2.5-inch 5400 RPM drives in 2013 with these consoles. It's absolutely laughable. But either way, it gives me promise and it makes me hopeful that using these games on the PS5 with backwards compatibility, or hell, even on the Xbox Series L as backwards compatibility, we'll see dramatically increased load times. And of course, there's promise and potential for the actual next-gen games as well, including my new computer, which has two SSDs, with two SSDs that are faster than the PS5, let alone all the other SSDs that are going to be in there as well. But now that all that stuff is out of the way, we can get to our best little segment that everyone loves every single week, and the reason, clearly, why everyone is here. Q, what's up? What's going on? What's going down? What's the 411? What are you playing? Well, since it's been a few weeks, my games that I've been playing are kind of all over the place. I can't even remember what we were doing on the last one of these that we did, but I'm pretty sure I had just started streaming Silent Hill 1. Of course, we completed Silent Hill 1 with streaming, it was fantastic, and then we moved on to the masterpiece that is Silent Hill 2. Again, we streamed all the way through that one, it was a damn good time. And then we moved on to Silent Hill 3, which was a very, very important one to me personally, because as much as I consider Silent Hill 2 one of the greatest games ever made, and the absolute masterpiece and pinnacle of the genre, I've never finished Silent Hill 3, so practically 95, maybe 90% of that game when we did it live on stream was brand new first experience for me. And the entire game and all exactly the same. Great game, I'm so happy about it. Other than that, Doom Eternal DLC. More of Doom Eternal, The Ancient Gods Part 1. It's fantastic, plays really well, it's as you'd expect. It doesn't change it up too much. They turn up the difficulty a bit. Marauders still aren't hard, even if you're fighting two of them at the same time. But the point is that it's more of the same and better. So that's really good. It was a bit more difficult, not exceptionally difficult. It was a decent size. There was only 3 levels, but each one was a decent chunk and decent length level as well. Even if I did run into a bit of an annoying glitch at one point that it took me like half a day to get around and half a day to get back into playing. The point is, I can't wait for the second one if it's going to be anything like this one as well. Now, there is one other thing as well that we want to talk about here, because Cyberpunk is still a couple of few weeks away. My God. Terrible, terrible production quality here today. But anyway, there's one other thing. Just the other day, I streamed the entirety, from start to finish, Gears of War on Xbox One backwards compatibility. The entire thing, start to finish. Now, that means later this week, probably tomorrow, but not promising anything, probably Tuesday, if not, definitely Wednesday, I'll be starting Gears of War 2. I'm not going to be promising the entire thing in one stream, but I will likely finish it over maybe 2 to 3 days. And then, of course, 2 to 3 streams, and then we move on to Gears of War 3. And after that, who knows, maybe we're at another one of these that we can work on by then. It's going to be good. Gears of War is still kind of old and clunky. Gears of War 2 is an improvement, of course, on a technical and control level. Gears of War 3, even further down that same road. But that's it. In the meantime, before we do round out here, of course, I do want to say one more time, just like we said at the very, very start, I thank every single person who's ever interacted with this channel, with me, in any way, shape, or form. If you've clicked one video, if you've clicked 100 videos, if you've clicked a live stream, if you've just lurked in there, if you, I don't know, if you hung out, shot the shit, if you subbed, if you follow me on Twitter, or whatever it is. Thank every single person. You guys are the reason I do this, and it makes it so much worthwhile for all of that. I couldn't do it without you, and I'm so thankful for all of that. But anyway, that is it for our 76th episode of our Quack Experimental Podcast. We will round it out right here and just end it real quick. We know the usual deal. Comment section below. Leave whatever it is you feel like leaving in there, and we will go on from there. As always, hit the appropriate button to let me know how I did on the video, and while you're at it, why not hit the subscribe button and even ring the little notification bell. Granted, getting a notification from YouTube about these high quality, amazing production episodes, let's just write this one off this week, but it's a whole other story, even if YouTube have tried to say no. Anyway, that's it, everyone. Thank you one last time before we move on going forward. Next up, 1 million subs. We're aiming high. Anyway, winners don't play switchboards.